Digital divide is a term that refers to the gap between demographics and regions that have access to modern information and communications technology, and those that don't have or have restricted access. This technology can include the telephone, television, personal computers, and the internet. Since the mid 1970s, social scientists and policymakers have been researching the contribution of information and communication technologies to economic development. In fact, ever since the first studies conducted by the researchers of World Bank and development agencies, social scientists have been developing tools and techniques to measure the impact of telecommunications on GDP growth, employment creation, and productivity, among other metrics. Globally, 3.2 billion people are using the internet by end of 2015, of which 2 billion are from the developing countries. For every internet user in the developed world, there are two in the developing world. However, 4 billion people from developing countries remain offline, representing two-thirds of the population residing in developing countries. Of the 940 million people living in the least developed countries, only 89 million use the internet, which corresponds to 9.5 penetration rate. By the end of 2015, there are more than 7 billion people mobile cellular subscription, corresponding to a penetration rate of 97%, up from the 738 million in year 2000. Between 2000 to 2015, global internet penetration grew from 6.5% to 43%. Mobile broadband is most dynamic market segment. Globally, mobile broadband penetration reaches 47% in 2015, a value that increased 12 times since 2007. The proportion of households with internet access at home increased from 18% in 2005 to 46% in 2015. Fixed broadband uptake is growing at a slower pace, with a 7% annual increase over the past 3 years and reaching 11% penetration by the end of 2015. The proportion of the population covered by a 2G mobile cellular network grew from 58% in 2001 and to 95% in 2015. Image shown is regarding the 3G mobile broadband coverage in rural areas. In 2015, the 3G population coverage is already at 69% from the world population of 7.4 billion. The accessibility of rural areas to the internet is a test of the digital divide. But nowadays, there are different ways to eliminate the digital divide in rural areas. One way of it is to use the power lines, satellite communications, which offers new possibilities in universal access to the internet, and the lack of telephone lines will not limit access. Lower access prices are also required to bridge the digital divide. The digital divide in 2015. By the end of 2015, 34% of households in developing countries have internet access compared with more than 80% in developed countries. In least developed countries, only 7% of households have internet access compared with the world average of 46%. Internet penetration in developing countries stands at 35%. The least developed countries lag behind with only 10%. In Africa, 1 in 5 people use the internet today, compared to almost 2 in 5 people in Asia and Pacific, and 3 in 5 people in the Commonwealth of Independent States. Mobile broadband penetration level are highest in Europe and the Americas, at around 78 active subscriptions per 100 inhabitants. Africa is the only region where mobile broadband penetration remains below 20%. Fixed broadband penetration remains at less than 1% in least developed countries. Africa and the Arab states stand out as the regions with the fewest fixed broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, at less than 1 and less than 4 respectively. In 2014, in 111 countries, the price of a basic fixed or mobile broadband plan corresponds to less than 5% of average gross national income per capita, thus meeting the Broadband Commission target. The global average price of a basic fixed broadband plan is 1.7 times higher than the average price of a comparable mobile broadband plan. In developing countries, average monthly fixed broadband prices are 3 times higher than in developed countries. Mobile broadband prices are twice as expensive as in developed countries. Fixed broadband uptake remains slow in developing countries and particularly in least developed countries, where penetration rates are now at 7% and less than 1% respectively. While the prices of a fixed broadband plans dropped sharply between 2008 and 2011, especially in developing countries, they have been stagnating since then and even increased slightly in the least developed countries. With the facts and figures presented, there are a variety of arguments regarding why closing the digital divide is important. The major arguments are the following. First is the economic equality. Some think that the access to the internet is a basic component of civil life that some developed countries aim to guarantee for their citizens. Telephone is often considered important for security reasons. Health, criminal, and other types of emergencies might indeed be handled better if the person in trouble has the access to the telephone. Another important fact seems to be that much vital information for people's career, civic life, safety are increasingly provided via the internet. Even social welfare services are sometimes administered and offered electronically. Second is the social mobility. It is believed that computer and computer network play an increasingly important role in their learning and career, so that education should include that of computing and use of the internet. Without such offerings, the existing digital divide works unfairly to the children in the lower socioeconomic status. In order to provide equal opportunities, government should offer some form of support. Third is the democracy. Many, if not all, thinks that the use of internet would lead us to healthier democracy in one way or another. Among the most ambitious visions are the increased public participation in election and decision-making process. And lastly, the economic growth, the development of information infrastructure and active use of it would be a shortcut to economic growth for less developed nations. Information technology in general tend to be associated with productivity improvements. The exploitation of the latest technologies may give industries of certain countries a competitive ad- advantage.
created using Powtoon.